Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Exposed. I'm your host, John Malanca. Thank you for joining us for episode 6, Anti-Aging, Reducing Inflammation, Formulations and Dosing. In our last episode, we met people who are providing medical cannabis to legal patients. We showed you how the raw plant is turned into medicinal oils and tinctures and explained why doctors are not allowed to tell patients where to buy it. We looked at the obstacles many patients face in acquiring medical cannabis, including Jill and Patricia, whose stories we've been following closely over the last few episodes. And we also met Sebastian, who moved his entire family from Georgia to Colorado in order to provide a better quality of life for his son Jagger. I'm forever grateful to each and every one of you who supported our mission by purchasing our series. Personally, I thank God every day for the knowledge that saved the life of my father-in-law, Stan. You may save someone's life, possibly your own, by having unlimited access to the series and by helping us bring the vital awareness and knowledge to even more people. Coming up in this episode, we're going to teach you how to effectively use medical cannabis by explaining the science behind proper dosing. We're also going to look at some surprising benefits of cannabis for healthy people, especially how it could reverse the aging process. You'll be surprised to learn that the sacred plant has incredible benefits for all senior citizens. We'll follow Jill as she makes her visit to the local dispensary and looks for a formulation that is effective for fighting her stage 4 cancer. Patricia will get the results of her latest scans to find out if the cannabis oil she's worked so hard to acquire are helping slow the spread of her cancer. As Patricia Crone visits the Ohio State University Medical Center, some amazing information is uncovered regarding the effects of cannabis on the aging brain.
Luckily, I knew where to find an expert on aging brains and cannabis. Gary Wink is professor of psychology and neuroscience at the Ohio State University.
How did you get the idea of doing cannabis research?
My research is in rats.
Yeah.
And my research for the past 30 years has been focused on the aging brain. What makes it age? What I'm trying to do is figure out how do we reverse that, or how do we slow it down? All right, that would be the key. Most people would be happy just to slow it down a little bit.
This is a young rat. He's a Fisher 344, and he should have a normal memory.
One of the biggest changes that wasn't really appreciated until probably 15 years ago was that as you get older, inflammation develops in the brain, and the principal properties of marijuana were sort of revealed over time as well. And it turns out that marijuana is a very effective anti-inflammatory. So we've been looking for drugs that are anti-inflammatories that get across the blood-brain barrier. And everything I've tested has worked very well in young brains, but nothing was ever effective in an old rat.
When we test old rats, they have a really bad memory. And the way we test that is in the Morris Water Maze, based on the decorations we put on the wall. He learns how to find the hidden platform in there. They get 6 training sessions every day for 4 days.
So one day, a colleague of mine here, Anik Marchalant, was looking at the literature on multiple sclerosis. The people with multiple sclerosis had found that it was treating their pain and their inflammation, which is a key component of MS. And we thought, well, wow, we're looking at inflammation in the brain, maybe we'll try the same thing.
All right, you gonna go swimming again, little guy? I know. A young rat like him should learn pretty quickly where the platform is, whereas an older rat would have no ability to do so. It'd be great if he found the platform for you. Oh, he's so close. So we have a camera on the ceiling that automatically tracks how he's swimming. Older rats that are really not smart, they'll just swim in circles until you take them out. You have to basically rescue them. But the young guys are very good at finding the platform. Ah, yes! Good job, buddy. So a normal young rat can find the platform, a normal old rat cannot find the platform, but when we give the older rats the synthetic cannabinoid, they're able then to find the platform.
Our wonderful surprise was that marijuana actually worked in an old brain. First time, first compound ever. So that just was so exciting because it gave us some hope that something would actually help people slow the aging process when they were already old.
We know that these rats have recovered something. They're more like the young rats than the old rats.
I mean, what's happening in the brain?
This astonished us. Something in the brain called neurogenesis is the birth of new neurons. That goes away as you get older. The loss of neurogenesis leads to depression, memory impairments, and marijuana reverses that. It doesn't just stop the loss of neurogenesis, it restarts it. So now, when you're young and you smoke a lot of marijuana, it makes you memory impaired. But if you're old, you've already got a bit of impairment, and marijuana seems to take that away. So it made our old animals smarter and our young animals a little dumber. This is an amazing drug. You know, it just happens in high doses because of all those receptors. To have this Jekyll and Hyde effect at high doses, it tends to impair. A puff a day, just one puff, is enough.
Oh, really?
I've been ingesting massive amounts of the stuff. I wonder what it's done to my head.
We've just seen the amazing way the sacred plant can affect the aging brain. Most people wouldn't connect the idea of medical cannabis with senior citizens, but is incredibly helpful to address many of the symptoms related to the body's aging process. When I speak at retirement communities, many seniors have a bias against the sacred plant because they're only familiar with it as an illegal drug, marijuana. But these seniors have also come to a place in their life where they don't want to take prescription medications, and they do want to continue living the life they've been living for the last 60, 70, 80, and even 90 years. It's amazing how many seniors are actually medical cannabis cardholders. Let's hear more about this from our experts.
What's so interesting is that you have this stereotype of those who use cannabis to be sort of like fried, you know, that their brains are fried, they can't remember anything. But it turns out that some of the most compelling research on its benefits are on its neurogenic properties, which means it's able to stimulate the regeneration of brain tissue. And that's a very powerful finding because in classical neurology, it was believed that the brain's cells don't regenerate. There's only a few substances ever identified that seem to have this property. So cannabinoids do actually seem to be able to contribute to that process.
I don't want to sit on the couch for 3 hours and not want to move. I don't want any of that.
Right,
You know,
right.
I just want the healing part of it.
Right. And I want you to start out with about
Okay,
that much,
right, got it.
okay? That way you have the double benefit of the absorption from the sublingual and the digestion of it. So
You get both.
You get
Okay, so it
both.
goes
So-
right into the bloodstream.
Exactly.
So instead of the mirror, I go back like this and open my mouth, and you drop it in like feeding a bird.
exactly,
Mama bird, you
right.
Israel's federal cannabis program also extends into nursing homes. The sacred plant has been found to help geriatric patients with pain, loss of appetite, agitation, and muscle spasticity. This is slowly gaining momentum in the United States, where some families realize that this plant can provide a beautiful gift to their older family members at the end of their lives. Let's go to Israel and hear more about this phenomenon.
So Tikkun Olam started a collaboration with Inbal Sikorin, our head nurse, in a place called Hadarim. It was a nursing home in Kibbutz Nan, where Inbal is from, and she was the head nurse there. And she came to us and she said, I don't have any solutions. I have reached the top of the treatment that I can provide my patients. And I'm willing to try medical cannabis. And obviously the families of the patients were pressuring her to start this treatment. And she had no clue. She had never encountered cannabis in her profession. So we started that dialogue, and she taught us the medicinal parts of treatment and patient care, and we were kind of guiding her through the medicinal cannabis speciality, the strains, and how we can make different products out of these different strains. And so we kind of created together a formula for treating the elderly, and especially geriatric patients in nursing homes, because obviously these patients cannot treat themselves. So the nurses have to be part of the treatment, they have to understand the products, and they have to accessibilize the treatment, provide the medication in the nursing houses.
So what I did in 2010, when I met Tikkun Olam, they took me to meet Professor Meshulam. So tell me, Inbal, he said, what the common problem that you have in a nursing home? So I said appetite, I said pain, agitation, and a nightmare, and spastic. And we opened a project. We serve under monitor the patients, was very carefully, and we found out a beautiful result and we wrote down now a rule how to treat old patients. So what I'm doing in the last few years, I'm going all over Israel to the nursing home and give education to the doctors, to the physician, and to the nurses to help them to understand how to work with cannabis, with medical cannabis.
Sometimes the doctors and the staff are very anxious, they're afraid. It's still called a dangerous drug in Israel. So they don't really know how to write it down, how to keep it in the toxins, what to do with it.
So we talk about Mrs. Da'an. She had Parkinson and CLL. We started cannabis before 1 year ago because she's suffering from movement problem. She shake and she was stiff.
And she was very painful.
Very, very painful. So we started as palliative care.
And now is stable. She's eat better. She's looking better. She's not suffering from pain. She's more cooperative. She's sleeping better, and she's wonderful.
I think what's amazing with this treatment is the fact that we set out to treat a certain disease. Let's say with this patient, she suffers from Parkinson, she wasn't eating well, she couldn't swallow, she was shaking, the quality of life was deteriorating, and after a couple of months, a geriatric patient doctor called us up and said, you have to see these blood results. She was also suffering from CLL, which is chronic lymphatic leukemia. And she was getting blood infusions twice a month, every 2 weeks. And he said, listen, in the past couple of months, we don't have to, transfer blood anymore. So this is an incredible finding in this treatment, and we didn't expect it at all. Sometimes we set out to treat a certain condition, and we find out that medical cannabis is treating, different symptoms that we didn't even think that it was capable of doing. So we really believe in the treatment of medical cannabis for geriatric patients and
quality life.
Yes, to improve the quality of life in these patients.
As you just heard from Maayan, the sacred plant can have unintended positive benefits for multiple conditions. In episode 7, you will learn about more breakthrough areas where scientists are finding cannabis can be effective, like graft versus host disease and fatty liver disease. We heard that a common issue for all geriatric patients is inflammation. We already learned that cannabidiol, also known as CBD, is a powerful anti-inflammatory. It may be that a preventative dose of cannabis can be helpful to all seniors. Let's hear more about this from Professor Ruth Galili at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Professor Galili has been studying the effects of CBD on inflammation in multiple sclerosis.
We are doing now the MS experiment in mice. It's called EAE. And there we really found again that cannabidiol effect really decrease the characteristic of the MS. And the animal really, if you give them 5 milligrams per kilo, they behave much, much better. In all the 3 phases, for 50 days, we look for the MS, EAE in mice. We give them the 5 milligram dose of cannabidiol, and we really find decrease of the symptom of the MS very nicely. I suggest that it can be also given to MS patient in the right amount, and it will improve enormously the symptoms of the patient. I am optimistic as cannabidiol will really help a lot. Apparently also in human being, especially against inflammation, as I said, and many old people, maybe all of them have inflammatory reaction in their body. Will it be around many of the organs and vertebrae and so on. And so I suggest that even in older age, from 70 or 80, if people complain of pains and so on, let them take daily, like aspirin they take daily, take the daily cannabidiol in the right amount, and their quality of life will be much better.
Yeah, cannabis is extremely anti-inflammatory. And here's why that's beneficial. So we all know inflammation is not good. Inflammation in your joints, arthritis, it hurts to bend your fingers. I think a lot of people don't realize that most diseases, including cancer, are a result of chronic inflammation. And so if we can ingest a substance like cannabis on a regular basis that helps to squelch inflammation, then we can really improve our chances of not ever being diagnosed with what's a life-threatening form of cancer or other diseases.
In the last episode, we saw patients who struggled to get access to the sacred plant. Some of these patients even had to move across country to be able to use it. Jill was thinking about moving to California if she's not able to find that type of medical cannabis she needs to treat her cancer in New York. Luckily for Jill, New York State recently passed their medical cannabis legislation, and Jill was able to get her legal medical cannabis card in New York. Let's go with her now to the local Manhattan dispensary.
I was worried about my son and the legalities of everything in the beginning, but I also felt it was really important for me and my relationship with him to be honest with him all the time about what I'm doing. It's a hard call. I mean, I'm honest with my son, but you never want to say that you're breaking a law. It's not what I want to teach him, but this law is wrong. And so I am teaching him to stand up for what is right. Now that it's legal in New York, I feel a little more confident carrying it around. And even with my son, I just feel better that it's legal here. And also, when I talk to patients every day, just by word of mouth, people hear what I've been doing for the past few years, and they call for my advice. And a lot of people are very apprehensive to get it in Colorado and California, and they want a legal place to get it. And I'm so happy that we have it now. But at this point, I feel like I don't have the right information to be telling people. I don't know what they should be getting. I don't know if there's any choices. Everyone who I've spoken to who has been to the dispensaries comes out with the same product, the 1-to-1 ratio. But that was a little while ago. I'm assuming they're progressing and going to get more product as time goes on. So I'm very curious to see what it is that they have to offer me and other patients. I'd like to be able to refer people to the dispensaries and tell them the ins and outs and what I think is a good product, and I'm curious to try them and see how they compare to what I have been taking, because it would be a lot easier for me to walk around the corner and get my medicine. Do I need that out again?
No, you don't need
Okay, good.
And this is a sublingual titration, so this is kind of what she recommended. So the THC portion in the sublingual titration is 4.9 milligrams of THC to the 4.9 of the CBD.
It's really low. I'm taking so much higher.
What are you using?
Oils.
You're using
oils sublingually, and I make suppositories. I mix the
Another
oil.
patient actually just mentioned the suppositories
it's
here.
Great. I feel like I've got a good grasp on a good handle on my pain.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to fight the cancer.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of choices, but I got a 20-to-1 ratio THC to CBD. You know, they were very interested in what my script said and what the doctor ordered, but I said we really shouldn't go by that because it was a little while ago and it was her first day. And they're more interested in talking to me about pain management. I think most of the patients in there are getting the medicine for pain management and not necessarily like shrinkage of tumors. It's more about pain medicine. What I'm afraid of is they were already saying that their patients said this wasn't strong enough and it's not working. So they said 90% of the patients switched to their vape, which is new today, and which is why it took me so long for the appointment. If I didn't have so much experience and knowledge behind all this, I think it's a very zen, nice place. The people were very nice. I met some lovely patients that I'll keep in touch with. The pharmacist was sweet, but she gave me some information that wasn't correct and apologized because it was only her second day here, but I think that's really bad.
Dosing is one of the most complicated areas of cannabis medicine. Each individual patient will respond differently to the medicine because our endocannabinoid systems are unique. It's not uncommon for patients to be more educated about cannabis formulations that work for their conditions than their doctors. This is because cannabis dosing requires a significant trial and error. The experts will tell us more about the patient titrating dosing process and the different ways of taking this medicine.
Cannabis is not a one-size-fits-all. For instance, if you are a lung cancer patient and you have two patients, same age, with the same stage of lung cancer, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be treated the same. It depends on the medical history, number one. Might be diabetic, might have a heart arrhythmia, might have high cholesterol. There's many, many things. So once a patient does get their medicine, we always tell them that sometimes there's adjustments in the first 2 weeks. There are some people who are hypersensitive to cannabis, and in turn, they realize that that first dose is far too much. Maybe they don't feel anything at all, but we won't know until that patient tries. Some people might call us and say, I've had a stomach ache for 2 days, could that be this medicine? Or, gosh, with that tiny, tiny amount, I was crazy euphoric. Is that normal? Well, no, that's not normal. What other medications are you taking? And did you tell the medical professional that you were taking that?
The next step must be coordinated with physicians, that they have full information about patient and his or her treatment, and full information about strain of cannabis which was used. Only by that way, if they collect all these informations, so we can start understand treatment with cannabis, and we can start also understand which strain can be for which disease and for which patient.
You need to understand that this is still a young industry in terms of cannabis extracts and dietary supplements. It's very important to use a trusted source that has done the laboratory analysis that's necessary so that you understand exactly what is in the cannabis that you're consuming and also what's not in it. You know, not all cannabis production is green. There are a lot of toxic chemicals and pesticides that certain producers will use in cannabis production because they don't really have the holistic dedication or the same mindset that we have when we are talking about integrated healing and greening the planet and opening our minds and healing the world by healing ourselves. That philosophy is not universal throughout the entire cannabis industry. So have some discernment, be informed, be a conscious consumer, and support the right companies that have the same alignment that you believe in.
Now, in medicine, we think of drugs as having something called a therapeutic window. So if there was a dose that's effective here and a dose that causes intolerable side effects here, you've got the space in between that you can play around with a dosing range. Pure THC has a narrow therapeutic window. Once you start adding in the other compounds that are found in the whole plant, that window broadens and you have better efficacy at lower doses and less side effects at higher doses.
I remember a story that came one patient and said, oh, I had high and I don't want it. How it's possible? I use all the time the same strain. It was because this bud was just with higher amount of this active compound. So it's not even comparable with the same patient when he used different buds. So we must use other tools.
One of the responsibilities I take is doing what we call MedWatch. And MedWatch is we have anybody send in any new medicine that people are claiming are dosed. Now, 99.9% of the products in a collective don't say any dose on them at all. So if they say they tested it and there's no dose on the label, they're lying, because if you spent the time and money to test something, I mean, the only possible reason you wouldn't put on the label is the results are horrible. So either it wasn't tested or the results are horrible, because you can get more money if the test results are great and they're correct. So out of the 1% of products maybe out there that are labeled, 80% of those labels are wrong. So that's been one of our big things, is just testing everything. And I want to eventually have web pages for this so people will just know what really has what.
So there's still challenges for patients in finding access to the right cannabis preparations. Now, a lot of adult patients especially can use even low quality cannabis without the guidance of a physician like us that knows what they're doing, and they're still able to get some pretty decent results, believe it or not, with minimal side effects. But when we're treating sensitive cases, like these pediatric seizure patients, or even adults with advanced cancers or severe neurological conditions, it's important to first of all know what's in the medicine and to have consistency from batch to batch, and to be able to do methodical trials with the different types of cannabis to find out what's working best for each individual patient. Where if someone starts at a low dose of cannabinoids, whether it's THC or CBD, as they titrate up, they'll get increased efficacy up to a certain point, and beyond that point, they'll start to lose efficacy. Less can be more with cannabis, it usually is.
The Ministry of Health asked me, how should we regulate cannabis? Obviously, a patient should get the same mixture every time, not get a lot of CBD the first time and a lot of THC the second time. He should be getting, as with any other drug, the same thing that helps him. So it is not like a drug that one can say 2 milligrams of something. It has to be a little bit, let's say 17% of cannabidiol or 18%. It doesn't make that much of a difference. But there will be well-defined 7 types of cannabis, and like every drug, it will say exactly what it contains, and a patient should get the same drug every time.
All of cannabis medicine is not tested. It should be required, and it should be a very rigorous level that these companies should be held to. We find that a lot of lab testing that comes with products, when you go to a dispensary and request the lab testings, your report could be 6 months old. You need to make sure that those lab tests are current. You also need those lab tests to know exactly what you're getting. If it says it's a CBD tincture or a THC tincture, how much CBD, how much THC? You want to make sure you're getting your money's worth as well. You don't want to pay a high price for something that might have only a minute amount of cannabinoids in it. As a consumer, the lab testing is important. As a patient, it's extremely important.
So what we're doing right now in Maine, we actually have a laboratory in our office so that patients, after they see us, we provide them with specific recommendations. They go out to the marketplace, we give them a shopping guide on how to find what they're looking for, and then they bring it back to our office. We test it for them.
And so now patients have the ability to bring in their tinctures or their oils or whatever they're able to get and have it tested, and then they know what they is, and then they give us that information. We can tell them, okay, take 3 drops of this tincture twice a day, or this tincture is useless, don't go to that person again.
So a lot of viewers may be thinking that all of our patients are smoking joints, and that's certainly not the case. I mean, when we got started, we did see a lot of people that were using cannabis that had never had any medical guidance on how to use it, and they came in smoking joints. And we actually teach most of those patients that they can drastically reduce their dose and get better effects from cannabis. But most of our patients nowadays prefer non-smokable delivery systems, such as a liquid medicine. You can take a very specific volume, like 1 milliliter or 2 milliliters, and just squirt it in your mouth. There's capsules, there's vaporizers, which are really useful for inhaling the cannabis without having the negative effects of smoke, because that will allow a very rapid onset. So when someone uses a vaporizer, they could be in severe pain or spasticity. 2 to 5 minutes later, they have relief. And that kind of instant relief is incredibly valuable.
It's especially wonderful for people, say, with migraines and nausea.
Are you enjoying today's show so far? Are you learning a lot of great information? Do you want to join our movement and support our mission to inform the world on the truth about cannabis? Then please consider supporting our cause by owning this complete series so you can watch it again and share it with a loved one, now or in the future. Your support allows us to continue researching the sacred plant and spreading our findings for free. Also, a portion of each sale gets donated to charities that are helping people every day to find relief for their pain and to live a longer, more vibrant life. So simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.
Unfortunately, it's not used, but I would like to stress it is very important, and it's known that it helps, and it's comparable between patients' suppositories. It doesn't influence your brain. It has no taste, no smell, and it's good also for patients which cannot ingest. They vomit or they have some surgery, and it's reproducible. Every time a patient obtains the same amount.
think physicians need to be educated on this so that we can help guide our patients. And I think people need to educate themselves about how to dose it accurately. Like we say, the most common thing we teach people is start really low. You can get much, and most of the time you can get better effects with a lower dose than you can with a higher dose. There's no reason to start with a higher dose. Start as low as you possibly can, and then very gradually work your way up.
Another thing about this field in medicine that defies a lot of the other parts of medicine is that the patient has to be educated and empowered to titrate the medicine or to do a methodical trial of different dosages over time so that they can find the optimal dose. Because a doctor can't tell a person what their optimal dose of cannabinoids are.
Now let's see what products Jill was able to buy at the New York dispensary and whether the formulations will be effective for her stage 4 cancer. Jill compares her different medications with Andrew, a brain cancer survivor who we met in episode 4.
I'm trying to think when I first learned about the research. Not really, but oddly enough, the person that gave me so much hope that I saw on YouTube was this guy named Stan Rutner. Do you know about him?
I don't, no.
Oh, so you have to look him up. He had brain cancer, and they actually, he was in hospice, and they gave him around 12 days to live, and he started using cannabis, and he's thriving off.
Oh my gosh.
Years later, he's 85, 86 years old.
Yeah.
You have to look him up. It's amazing.
The scariest thing to me is, not being able to take advantage of this safe treatment, and then somewhere years down the road, whether we're still here or not, they find out that, oh, you know what? Just a little bit of cannabis a day, keep the doctor away.
I was standing outside the dispensary waiting to go in, and I think I saw him going in, and I kind of felt this little quick pang of connection. I have no idea why. No idea. I just knew he was someone I wanted to talk to. And he just looked like a kind soul and someone I would connect with. I don't know why. He was on Temodor because that's brain cancer chemotherapy, and I'm on Temodor because they're using it for neuroendocrine cancer now. And there are these studies with Temodor, temolazide, and THC and the entourage effects. My doctor believes in it now because I was her clinical study, and I certainly believe in it.
So I was so happy after meeting you and just talking to you for the first 5 seconds. I felt relieved that I was speaking to somebody who knows and who's going through the similar things that I'm going through. You've been researching all of the alternative or complementary alternative methods, nutrition and cannabis, and the anti-cancer properties of cannabis. I mean, I feel like you and I are on the same page there. Now that you're a legal New York...
Illegal? Or
No, you're legal now.
Legal.
You're a legal New York
I'm legal in California.
medical marijuana patient. Oh, you're legal in California too? Oh, lucky you. But you're legal here in New York. What are your thoughts on the New York dispensary and the products that they are giving us?
I got a 20-to-1, so that's 20 times the THC to 1 part of the CBD.
Right.
And I did that. I couldn't decide. So they have 20-to-1 there, they have 1-to-1, and then they have 1-to-20.
Who's the 1-to-1?
That's the 1-to-1. So it's 5. Oh wait, so that's 5 and 5.
Yeah. So
and mine is
10.4 and 0.52
okay.
CBD.
So this is higher in the THC anyway.
It is, but that goes along with the New York State rules of only being allowed to give out single dosages of 10 milligrams total cannabinoids per dose.
ridiculous.
Plus, they've got some monthly limitation that even
Yes.
if you were able to go in there and
I was only able to buy 6 of these per month, 6 or 7.
Oh, is that what they told you? Only 6
or at a
7?
time. I don't know if it was per month, but they were going to let me
It's
get
pretty limited per month.
6 of these. On the other hand, he said he has some patients taking this 6 times a day. So then that's it. That's one box per day.
I mean, I finished off one of these in 2 days.
It's easy to do that
It's very
compared
easy.
to
And
this.
you've got 7 full doses
Here,
in there.
Could you do the math compared to?
Oh yeah. Oh, so this is
Not to put you on the spot, but
this is the real stuff.
that's the
You've
real
got
stuff.
the
That's the real oil.
Ogre Kush.
This is the
So
curing
this is
oil.
insanely strong compared to this
Yes.
little thing.
This makes you feel nice, and this kills cancer.
That's one of the things that's so frustrating and confusing right now is dosing guidelines. You know, I mean, we all know this quickest way to get it into your bloodstream, injection doesn't count, let's say, is inhaling it. But obviously there are drawbacks to that.
I mean, I guess the question is, do you want it to get straight into your bloodstream, or do you want it to go through the digestive system?
I have heard quite a bit about states wanting to limit the potency of products in general in the cannabis industry. When you think of cannabis oil that people are using for cancers, some cancers need a much higher potency, but it's utilized differently. It's not recreationally used. We work within about 15 different formulations of cannabis oils, tinctures. There's transdermal patches for pain and nausea, suppositories, capsules. Within that sector, I would be worried to limit potencies. But within brownies, cupcakes, lollipops, and so on, I would not have an issue and don't see a reason not to limit those potencies.
So many cancer patients that I run into ask me where to get, or how I get, effective doses of cannabis, doses effective enough to possibly treat cancer. And, that's a tough call. A lot of people don't like the idea of breaking the law. And, maybe I'm being naive, but I can't imagine acquiring small amounts of cannabis oil for myself, or patients doing the same for themselves, would actually be something that the law would prosecute them for. And if that does happen, I mean, that's just, I don't know. I don't know what hope I have for humanity at that point. That's just crazy to me.
As you just heard from two experienced patients, Jill and Andrew, the state restrictions about how many milligrams of cannabinoids are allowed in each dose can be limiting and cost prohibitive for patients. Patients need to be able to take their therapeutic dose just as they would with any other medication. Unfortunately, much of the mainstream media coverage on cannabis, including the prominent series on CNN, has promoted CBD over THC, mainly because CBD is non-psychoactive. This has led to a push for CBD-only laws around the country, which actually hurts the patients who require more THC. As you've seen, dying patients are not interested in getting high. They're interested in getting better. They need to be able to take enough THC to kill their cancer or to treat their pain. My wife, Corinne, and I thought we were giving CBD capsules to her father, Stan, who was in hospice, and after his miraculous recovery, I tested the capsules and found out they were actually high in THC. Ultimately, THC played a huge role in Stan's recovery. Let's hear more from our experts on dosing and formulations.
So this plant right here is a 1-to-1 ratio. It's an even amount of CBD and THC. And the rest of the plants are 22% CBD to 1% THC. And these plants, the higher the cannabidiol content, the better it's going to help control my symptoms. So I should need less material overall to be able to get the same effect. Some conditions are better for THC and some for CBD, and some conditions can do really well with an even ratio. Would you care to enlighten us on which conditions?
Yeah, this 1-to-1 plant is real good for neurologic issues like multiple sclerosis or spinal cord injury. Whereas the 22-to-1, which is right next to it, is a very potent anti-inflammatory, and the CBD acid in the raw plant acts at that orphan receptor that's involved in cancer growth and metastasis.
And autoimmune disorders.
And autoimmune disorders and epilepsy and psychosis. It's one of those, how can one plant do all that? And maybe when we're in the office, we can go over how a single molecule is so effective across the broad range of conditions.
Genetically speaking, hemp and cannabis are the same plant. Medicinally speaking, they have different applications. Hemp CBD is a great health and wellness product, anti-inflammatory, can be anti-seizure on some levels. And cannabis has anti-cancer, anti-seizure, anti-inflammatory. From our perspective, cannabis has much more medicinal applications to offer than hemp does. I know people gravitate towards hemp because it's legal in all 50 states, although the FDA did put out a letter stating that CBD is still a Schedule I substance. But there are many, many patients who would thrive with a tad of THC. For instance, the seizure patients. If you take hemp CBD, there's dramatic reduction in seizures. Some patients, if you add a tad of THC, they'll have a much more reduction in their seizure activity. So, but you don't know that until you try it with each patient. A lot of people don't have access to cannabis, so they don't have that luxury. And hemp is the next best thing.
You should now have a better understanding about how THC and CBD work on different conditions, as well as the misinformation about hemp products. Now let's join Patricia as she receives the results of her last PET scan after using cannabis oil for 2 months.
In December 2012, after taking cannabis oil for 4 months, another scary test. I had a PET scan on my lung, ground zero of all my troubles. So now I'm waiting for the result of the PET scan I had last week, which will show me whether the cancer has spread to somewhere else in my body. So it's slightly nerve-wracking. Does it show?
There's nothing on your PET scan.
Nothing?
Mm-mm. Nothing that's recurrent that we can see within the chest cavity or anywhere else.
Nothing?
The PET scan is clean. Your PET scan's completely negative.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, it's slightly relieved, but not as relieved as I thought I was going to be. But that's pretty good.
It's great news.
You know, with all good news, as it saturates, and I will get to feel happier about it.
And it doesn't look at the brain.
I have 9 lesions in the brain now, and that I'm still asymptomatic.
You'll follow up with the radiation oncologist with your brain.
Yeah.
Which I'm unhappy about your brain mets, but I'm pretty happy about your PET scan.
There's a good chance that the cannabis has something to do with it, and so I'm not going to risk anything by stopping now. I have no doubt there is an anti-tumor potential in cannabis that should be explored. But there are still no human trials. So I continue to be my own human cannabis trial. And often it does feel like a trial. I hate it.
There's some good news for Patricia on her lung PET scan. We will follow her closely as she continues taking cannabis oil to try to reduce the metastasis in her brain. This episode is full of vital information, so let's review what we learned so far. In this episode, we saw how to effectively use medical cannabis and explored the science behind proper dosing. We also saw the surprising benefits of cannabis for healthy people, especially how to reverse the aging and inflammation process in senior citizens. We heard Jill and Andrew assess the offerings at their local dispensary and whether formulations would be effective for Jill's stage 4 cancer. And lastly, we learned more about CBD and THC ratios and the misleading hype behind hemp-based products. Millions of people desperately need this information to safely and effectively treat the disease that they're suffering from. You could help us reach these people by sharing this video series far and wide. Coming up in this final episode, we'll check in with many of the patients we've met throughout the series. We'll hear more about the new advances in medical cannabis and what that means for patients. We'll also get a backstage look at a cannabis conference at Harvard Medical School. This final episode is going to bring some major news for Patricia and Jill, who we've been following closely throughout our series. Jill will receive a new set of scans to see if the cannabis is actually helping her fight her stage 4 cancer. Patricia needs to decide whether the cannabis is working effectively enough to avoid undergoing a whole brain radiation. It's going to be a powerful and moving closure to our series, full of dramatic events and more vital information about how the sacred plant works. I invite you to join our movement, support our mission, and help us save lives. We're a small company that's committed to the truth and to helping humanity. Since we don't have the unlimited resources that Big Pharma has, we need to work together to educate and empower more people about the healing benefits of the sacred plant. When you support our mission by owning the complete series today, You allow us to continue research, interview, expose, and share this knowledge with the world for free. If you learned something, been inspired, want to watch it again, share it with a loved one, or just love how it feels to support a good cause, consider owning the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Exposed today. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. Thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.